The call came on a Tuesday at 2:17 p.m. My husband, Mark, was supposed to be 3,000 miles away in San Francisco, wooing tech investors at a finance conference. I was at the kitchen island, surrounded by the mundane architecture of my life, a pile of permission slips for my daughter, Maya, a half-finished cup of tea, and my laptop open to our online banking portal. The phone buzzed, displaying a local number I didn't recognize. "Is this Mrs. Elena Vance?" A young woman's voice asked, hesitant and threaded with an anxiety that immediately put me on edge. "This is she," I said, my pen pausing over a check for the plumber. "Ma'am, my name is Chloe. I work at the downtown branch of City National Bank." My brow furrowed. We banked there, but I rarely went in person. "I know this is a strange call, and I'm sorry to bother you, but your husband, Mark Vance, is here." The world tilted slightly. A laugh, small and confused, escaped my lips. "My husband? That's impossible. He's in San Francisco for work. He doesn't get back until Friday." I imagined him in his crisp suit, charming a boardroom, not standing in a bank queue 10 miles from our home. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a breath held too long. "Ma'am?" Chloe said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He is standing right in front of my desk. He's trying to get a power of attorney document notarized. It would give him sole control over all your joint assets." The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. Power of attorney? We had discussed that years ago for emergencies, for a distant hypothetical future where one of us was incapacitated. Not for a Tuesday afternoon when I was perfectly healthy and paying the bills. My heart began a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. "And ma'am?" Chloe's voice was even lower now, almost a ghost in my ear. That's not the main reason I'm calling." I gripped the edge of the granite countertop, my knuckles turning white. What could possibly be worse? "He's with a woman," she whispered. The words hung in the air, sharp and lethal. I felt a familiar, ugly spike of suspicion, the kind I had been squashing down for months. But Chloe wasn't finished. She delivered the final, devastating blow that would incinerate the world I knew. "And ma'am, she looks almost exactly like you. Same hair color, same height. She's even wearing a wedding ring that looks just like yours from here." I couldn't breathe. My blood didn't just run cold, it turned to solid ice in my veins. A woman who looked like me. Not just an affair. Something else. Something colder, more calculated, and infinitely more terrifying. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was trying to replace me. Before I tell you how I unraveled a lie so vast and monstrous it nearly erased me, I need you to do a little something for me. Go ahead and hit that like button right now, with a little more force than you usually would. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please subscribe and make sure you ring that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from tonight. Settle in, grab a drink, because this story is proof that sometimes the devil doesn't wear horns. Sometimes he kisses you good morning and tells you he loves you. Trust me, you are going to want to stay until the very end. To understand the depth of the betrayal, you have to understand the perfection of the illusion. Our life wasn't just good on paper. It was a masterpiece of suburban bliss, a painting I had dedicated 15 years of my life to creating. We lived in a sprawling white colonial with black shutters on a tree-lined street in Northwood, the kind of neighborhood where people jogged with golden retrievers, and children's laughter was the constant background music. From the outside, we were the Vances, the golden couple, the ones who had it all. I met Mark in college. He was a force of nature, a brilliant, ambitious business major, with a smile that could disarm armies and a gaze that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. I was an art student, lost in a world of charcoal sketches and abstract paintings. He pursued me with a single-minded determination that I found intoxicating. He'd show up at my studio with coffee, praising my work with an intensity that made me blush. He told me my creativity was a gift, that my soul was beautiful. He made me believe I was extraordinary. Our proposal was something out of a movie. We were on the Pont des Arts in Paris, the city lights twinkling on the Seine below. He got down on one knee and told me that his life's ambition wasn't just to succeed in business, but to build a beautiful life with me. I, of course, said yes. Our wedding was a lavish affair at a historic estate, a testament to his already burgeoning success. We danced under a canopy of fairy lights, and I remember thinking, with the kind of pure, unadulterated certainty only a 23-year-old in love can feel, that this was it. This was my forever. The first few years were a whirlwind of his rising career and my own. I was a graphic designer, and my freelance business was finally taking off. I was landing big clients, my portfolio was getting noticed, and I felt a thrilling sense of purpose. Then came Leo, our sweet, thoughtful son. 2 years later, our firecracker daughter, Maya, arrived, and slowly, subtly, the conversation began to shift. "Elena, honey," Mark would say, his arm around me as we looked at our sleeping babies. "You're so incredible with them. You're a natural. With my commissions this year, we don't need the extra income from your work. Imagine if you didn't have the stress of deadlines. Imagine if you could be here for every first step, every first word." He painted it as a gift, a luxury, an investment in our family. He wasn't asking me to give up my career. He was offering me the freedom to be a full-time mother, a role he claimed to revere above all others. And I, so deeply in love with him and our children, believed him. I packed away my sketchbooks, canceled my contracts, and traded my portfolio for PTA meetings and perfectly curated lunchboxes. My identity, once so vibrant and my own, was slowly subsumed. I became Mark's wife, Leo and Maya's mom, the woman behind the successful man. And for a long time, I convinced myself that was enough. Our life ran like a well-oiled machine, and I was its chief engineer. I managed the house, the schedules, the social calendar. I baked gluten-free cupcakes for school fundraisers, volunteered in the library, and hosted elegant dinner parties where Mark could network with his colleagues. Our home was immaculate, a spread from a home decor magazine. Our children were well-mannered and excelling in school. I was the silent partner who made his public success possible, and everyone saw it. Our neighbors would comment on our perfectly manicured lawn and the new SUV in the driveway. "You two are so lucky," our friend Sarah once said over a glass of wine. "Mark is such a great provider, and you make it all look so effortless, Elena." My own parents adored him. "He takes such good care of you, sweetie," my mother would say. "You found a good one." His mother, Eleanor, was my biggest cheerleader, or so I thought. She was a formidable woman, polished and poised, who always had a kind word for me. "I couldn't have asked for a better wife for my son," she'd tell her friends at the country club. "Elena holds our entire family together. She is the perfect, supportive wife." I soaked up her praise, desperate for the approval of the woman who raised the man I loved. I never realized her compliments were a cage, reinforcing the role she and her son needed me to play. I sacrificed my dreams, my independence, and my name, laying it all at the altar of our family. I gave him everything, and I had no idea that while I was busy building our perfect life, he was secretly planning to burn it to the ground, with me inside. Looking back now, the red flags were not just there. They were giant, crimson banners flapping in a hurricane, and I was willfully, desperately blind to them. The first, and most obvious, was the phone. For the first decade of our marriage, Mark's phone was a communal object. He'd leave it on the counter, and I'd answer it if it rang while he was busy. The kids would use it to play games, but about 2 years ago, that changed. It started subtly. The phone was no longer left on the kitchen island. It was in his pocket. Always. It went with him from the bedroom to the bathroom, a new, permanent appendage. Then, the screen was always, without exception, placed face down on any surface. If I walked into the room while he was texting, he would quickly flip it over or angle his body away from me. I remember asking him about it once. We were in bed, the blue light of his screen illuminating his face. "Who are you always texting so late?" I asked, trying to sound casual, playful even. His face hardened for a fraction of a second before the charming mask slipped back into place. "Just work, honey. The markets in Asia are opening. It never stops." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. A few days later, I picked up his phone to use its calculator and was met with a password screen. It had never had a password before. "Oh, it's a new security protocol from work," he explained smoothly when I asked. "Client confidentiality. We're handling some very sensitive accounts. You understand." And I did. Or rather, I chose to. I was the supportive wife. His job was high pressure. I told myself it was my duty to trust him, not to add to his stress with baseless suspicions. I defended him to myself. I was being silly, paranoid. Then came the changes to his schedule. The business trips became more frequent and more spontaneous. It used to be a big conference once a quarter, planned months in advance. Suddenly, it was a last-minute flight to Chicago to put out a fire with a client, or a week-long trip to San Francisco to scout locations for a new West Coast office. He'd call me from his hotel room, his voice tired, telling me how much he missed me and the kids. I now know those calls were likely made from an apartment across town, his laughter hollow, his words a well-rehearsed script. The late nights at the office became the norm rather than the exception. He'd come home long after the kids were in bed, smelling faintly of a cologne I didn't recognize and the stale air of a bar. "The market was a bloodbath today," he'd sigh, loosening his tie. "Had to stay late with the team to strategize." I'd rub his shoulders, my heart aching for the stress he was under, never once questioning the narrative he was feeding me. My best friend Clara tried to warn me. We were having lunch, and I was lamenting how distant Mark had been. "Elena," she said gently, stirring her iced tea. "Are you sure it's just work? A guy in my husband's office was pulling the same thing. The late nights, the sudden trips. It turned out he had a whole other apartment downtown." I was instantly defensive. "Mark is not like that," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "You don't know how much pressure he's under. He's doing all of this for us, for the family." I was so invested in the illusion of our perfect marriage that I attacked the one person who dared to hold a mirror up to the cracks. I explained away his behavior because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. I defended him to everyone who questioned, because if I didn't, the entire foundation of my life would crumble. The financial signs were there too, but I was in no position to see them clearly. A few years prior, Mark had suggested he take over all the family finances. "You have enough on your plate with the house and the kids, honey?" he'd said, his tone dripping with consideration. "Let me handle the investments and the bills. It'll be one less thing for you to worry about." It felt like another act of love, Another way he was taking care of me. I was given a generous household allowance deposited into my personal account each month, and I never saw another bill or bank statement. I had no idea he was systematically siphoning money from our joint accounts into offshore holdings I didn't even know existed. Once, while cleaning out his briefcase, a receipt from a high-end jewelry store I'd never heard of fell out. It was for a diamond tennis bracelet that cost more than my car. My heart did a little flip-flop of excitement. Was it an anniversary surprise? But our anniversary came and went, and no bracelet appeared. When I finally got the courage to ask him about it, he didn't even blink. "Oh, that," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "That was a corporate gift, for a major client's wife. You know how it is, you have to keep them happy." It sounded plausible. It sounded like the world he operated in. So, I let it go. I filed it away with all the other little inconsistencies, all the other tiny moments of doubt. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the father of my children, the man who had promised me forever on a bridge in Paris. The gaslighting was the most insidious part. Whenever I'd voice a concern, a feeling of unease about his distance or his secrecy, he would turn it back on me with surgical precision. "Elena, you seem really insecure lately. Is everything okay?" He'd ask, his face a mask of concern. "You know I'm killing myself at work for this family. The last thing I need when I come home is an interrogation." He made me feel needy, irrational, ungrateful. He suggested I was bored, that I needed a hobby to occupy my mind. His mother, Eleanor, was his loyal second-in-command in this psychological warfare. I'd confide in her, hoping for a mother-in-law's wisdom, and she would gently reinforce his narrative. "Oh dear," she'd say, patting my hand. "Men like Mark, successful men, they carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. He needs your unwavering support, not your doubts. Don't add to his stress with your anxieties. A strong marriage is built on trust." They worked in perfect concert, a tag team of manipulation, convincing me that the problem wasn't his behavior, but my perception of it. I was so blind, so incredibly, painfully blind. I chose to believe in the beautiful lie, because the truth was a chasm I was terrified to face. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And my truth was about to come calling, right from the downtown branch of City National Bank. The moments after Chloe's words detonated in my ear are a blur of disjointed sensory details. The smooth, cold feel of the granite countertop under my sweating palms. The scent of cinnamon from the tea I would never finish. The sight of my own hand, the one wearing the ring he'd placed on my finger, shaking so violently that I dropped the cordless phone. It clattered to the hardwood floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden crushing silence of my kitchen. He was here, not in San Francisco. He was here, in our city, with a woman who looked like me, actively trying to steal my entire life out from under me. My first coherent thought was an animalistic urge to run, to get in my car and drive to that bank and confront him. To scream and claw, and make a scene so enormous it would tear down the pristine facade of his life. But something held me back. Some newly awakened, ice-cold instinct whispered that raw emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford. This wasn't a crime of passion. The power of attorney, the doppelganger. This was a plan. A cold, calculated, meticulously orchestrated plot. And you don't fight a plan with hysterics. You fight a plan with a better plan. I picked up the phone. My voice, when I finally found it, was a reedy whisper. "Chloe, are you still there?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm here." Her voice was a lifeline in a churning sea of chaos. "Are they still there? Can you see them?" "Yes. He's arguing with my manager now. The manager is explaining that a power of attorney requires both parties to be present if one is not incapacitated. The woman, she looks terrified. She won't make eye contact with anyone. Chloe, can you do something for me? I asked, a desperate, wild idea forming in the wreckage of my mind. Can you tell them you need a copy of his driver's license and the woman's ID to proceed? Can you scan them? Can you email them to me? There was a moment of hesitation. Ma'am, that's highly irregular. I could lose my job. Please, I begged, the word tearing from my throat. He's my husband. We have 2 children. He told me he was out of state. I think I'm in terrible trouble. Please. Another pause. Then, hold on. I heard muffled sounds, the polite, professional tone of a bank teller. Then her voice was back, sharp and quick. Okay, I have them. What's your email address? I rattled it off, my fingers fumbling as I opened my laptop. A few seconds later, an email pinged in my inbox. The subject line was blank. Inside were 2 attachments. I clicked on the first. It was Mark's driver's license, his familiar, smiling face mocking me from the screen. Then I clicked the second. My breath hitched. It was her. The woman's name was Anna Keller, age 32. And Chloe hadn't been exaggerating. It was like looking at a distorted reflection of myself from 10 years ago. The same dark, wavy hair. The same heart-shaped face and wide-set brown eyes. She was thinner, perhaps, and her expression in the driver's license photo was haunted, but the resemblance was undeniable, terrifying, and deeply, profoundly insulting. Was I so generic, so utterly replaceable, that he could just order a new model? Did they sign anything? I asked Chloe, my voice shaking. No, he's furious. He's taking her and leaving. Ma'am, he just looked over here. I have to go. The line went dead. I sank onto a kitchen stool, my legs no longer able to support me. The adrenaline drained away, leaving behind a hollow, cavernous emptiness, the sheer audacity of it, the cruelty. He hadn't just found another woman. He had found my replacement. He was building a new life on the ashes of ours, and he was planning to make me pay for the demolition. I looked around my beautiful kitchen, the heart of the home I had so lovingly built. It felt like a stage set, a lie. Everything was a lie. My marriage, my security, the man I thought I knew, all of it, a carefully constructed fiction. And the author was about to come home in 3 days, expecting his adoring, ignorant wife to welcome him with a kiss. That night was the longest of my life. I went through the motions of motherhood on autopilot. I helped Leo with his algebra homework, my mind a million miles away, replaying Chloe's words. I read Maya a bedtime story, the familiar words of a fairy tale turning to ash in my mouth. I tucked them in, kissing their foreheads, my heart constricting with a fierce, protective terror. They were the only real things left in my life. After they were asleep, I locked myself in our master bathroom. I stood in front of the large, ornate mirror Mark had insisted we buy, and I stared at my own reflection. I saw the fine lines around my eyes, the silver strands starting to thread through my dark hair. I saw the face of a 38-year-old woman, a mother, a wife who had poured every ounce of her being into her family. Then I pictured the face from the driver's license, Anna Keller. Younger, fresher, a blank canvas, a perfect, programmable replacement. The first sob was a raw, guttural sound that was ripped from the deepest part of my soul. Then another, and another. I slid down the cool marble wall to the floor, wrapping my arms around myself as 15 years of love and trust shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I cried for the naive girl who fell in love in Paris. I cried for the young mother who gave up her dreams without a second thought. I cried for the woman I was just this morning, blissfully ignorant and safe in her beautiful, fragile world. I sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut until there were no tears left to cry. I lay on the cold tile for hours, lost in a black ocean of grief and betrayal. The questions were a relentless torture. How long had this been going on? Who was Anna Keller? Where did he find her? Was our whole life a sham? Every "I love you," every shared laugh, every family vacation, was it all a performance? And then, somewhere in the darkest hour before dawn, something shifted. The grief, so heavy it felt like it could drown me, began to recede, and in its place, a different emotion started to burn. It was anger. A cold, hard, clarifying rage. He had underestimated me. He and his mother, with all their talk of me being the supportive wife, had typecast me as the docile, compliant homemaker. They saw me as an obstacle to be managed and phased out. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. I pushed myself up from the floor and looked in the mirror again. The woman staring back was not the same one who had collapsed there hours earlier. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, but behind the pain, there was a glint of steel, a fire. He wasn't going to erase me. He wasn't going to take my children's future and leave us with nothing. I would not be a victim in his sick story. I would be the one who wrote the ending. The weak, trusting woman he married had died on that bathroom floor, and in her place, a fighter had been born. My war was just beginning. The next morning, I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. My first call was to Chloe at the bank. I got her on her personal cell, a number she had cautiously given me. I asked if she would be willing to meet me just for a few minutes. She was hesitant, terrified of losing her job, but the injustice of the situation had clearly gotten under her skin. She agreed to meet me on her lunch break in a quiet corner of a public park. Sitting on that park bench, Chloe, a woman half my age with kind eyes and a fierce sense of right and wrong, became my first ally. She recounted the entire scene in detail. Mark's slick, confident demeanor, the way he spoke to Anna as if she were a child, his barely concealed fury when the manager denied his request. "He was a bully," she said, shaking her head. "And she looked like a prisoner." I knew in my gut that something was deeply wrong. Before she left, she handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the unsigned power of attorney document. "I made a copy before he stormed out," she whispered, "just in case." This young woman, a complete stranger, had taken a huge risk for me. She was my first glimmer of hope. My second step was to find a weapon. And in a war like this, the best weapon is a brilliant lawyer. I remembered my friend Clara mentioning a divorce attorney, a woman named Sarah Chen, who she'd called a velvet-gloved shark. I found her firm online. The consultation fee was astronomical. I looked at my personal bank account, at the rainy day fund I had painstakingly saved over the years from the rare freelance design job I'd take on the side. It was my secret stash, my little bit of independence. It was about to be my war chest. I walked into Sarah Chen's sleek, downtown office feeling small and terrified. But the moment she started to speak, I knew I was in the right place. She was sharp, impeccably dressed, with an air of calm, lethal competence. I told her everything, my voice shaking as I laid out the story. The business trip, the bank call, the doppelganger, the power of attorney. I slid the copy of the document and the scanned IDs across her polished mahogany desk. She listened without interruption, her eyes never leaving mine. Her expression shifted from professional curiosity to steely-eyed focus. When I was finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Elena," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I want you to forget the word divorce. A divorce is what happens when a marriage ends. What your husband is doing is not the end of a marriage. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud. He isn't just cheating on you. He is trying to financially obliterate you. We are not filing for divorce. We are building a criminal case." The words sent a shockwave through me. A criminal case. The gravity of it settled in, both terrifying and validating. I wasn't just a scorned wife. I was the victim of a calculated crime. "So, what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. This was where the strategist, the shark, emerged. "We do the hardest thing you will ever have to do in your life. We do nothing. He comes home on Friday, and you welcome him with open arms. You ask about his trip. You make his favorite dinner. You play the part of the devoted, unsuspecting wife. You cannot let him know that you know, not a single crack in the facade. Because while you are playing your part, we are going to be in his life with a microscope. We will hire a forensic accountant to trace every dollar he has ever moved. We will find out who this Anna Keller is. We will gather so much evidence, so much proof of his crimes, that when we finally make our move, he won't have a leg to stand on. We are going to let him walk deeper and deeper into the trap he set for you. And then we are going to spring it." The plan was terrifying. To live with him, to sleep next to him, to smile at him while my entire world was burning down around me. It felt impossible. But as I looked at Sarah's determined face, I felt that flicker of rage inside me ignite into a steady flame. I could do this. For my children. For myself. I would become the greatest actress the world had ever seen. Mark came home on Friday night, right on schedule. I heard his key in the lock, and my entire body went rigid. I took a deep breath, plastered a smile on my face, and went to greet him at the door. The kids ran to him first, shouting, "Daddy!" and wrapping their arms around his legs. He scooped them up, kissing them. The perfect picture of a loving father returning from a long trip. "Hey, you," he said, his eyes meeting mine over Maya's head. He leaned in to kiss me. His lips were cool, and the touch felt like a violation. I had to fight every instinct in my body not to recoil. "Welcome home," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally high. "We missed you. How was the conference?" And then the performance began. He launched into an elaborate, detailed account of his week in San Francisco. He talked about keynote speakers, networking dinners, potential investors he'd met. He named restaurants he'd supposedly eaten at, complained about the fog, and described the view from his hotel room. It was a masterpiece of fiction, delivered with the effortless confidence of a pathological liar. I listened, nodded, asked the right questions, and felt a piece of my soul shrivel and die with every word. He had even brought back gifts, a cable car toy for Leo, a sweatshirt for Maya, and a delicate silver necklace for me. "I saw this and thought of you," he said, fastening it around my neck. The cold metal felt like a collar. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. I lived a double life. By day, I was Elena Vance, the perfect suburban wife, making breakfasts, driving carpool, and smiling pleasantly. But at night, after he fell asleep, a different Elena emerged. Armed with his fingerprint, gently lifted from his sleeping hand to unlock his phone and laptop, I became a spy in my own home. Working with Sarah and the forensic accountant she'd hired, a brilliant man named Mr. Davies, I spent hours each night downloading data. Emails, text messages, bank statements, everything. I moved like a ghost through the house, uploading gigabytes of information to a secure cloud server Sarah had created. Every ping of a successful upload was a small victory, a nail in the coffin I was building for him. The discoveries came fast. and they were more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. Mr. Davies found the hidden accounts first. 3 of them, in the Cayman Islands, registered under a shell corporation. For the past 4 years, Mark had been systematically siphoning money from our joint investments and his bonuses into these offshore funds. He had stolen millions. Our millions. The money I thought was securing our children's future was in his personal slush fund. Then came the emails. I found a dedicated folder, deceptively labeled Q3 Projections. It was his entire correspondence with his mother, Eleanor. Reading those emails felt like swallowing glass. They discussed me with cold, clinical detachment. They referred to me as the liability or the domestic situation. Eleanor wasn't just aware of his plan. She was an active participant. One email from her, sent 6 months ago, read, "Mark, you must be more careful. The liability is getting suspicious. You need to reassure her. Maintain the status quo until the pieces are in place. Remember the goal. Full control, no complications." His reply, "Don't worry, Mother. I have her completely under control. She's too busy with the kids and the house to see anything. She trusts me completely. We're almost there. The transition will be smooth." The transition, that's what they called my destruction. The most damning discoveries were about Anna Keller. He hadn't met her by chance. We found emails to a boutique modeling agency. He had specifically requested a model who fit my physical description. He was, in effect, casting my replacement. There were contracts, payment schedules, and a series of emails from him to Anna. He was coaching her. He had created a dossier on me, a sick, twisted study guide that included my mannerisms, my favorite phrases, my signature, even the brand of tea I drank. He was training her to become me. The plan was clear. He would use the power of attorney to liquidate all our assets in the U.S., transfer the money to his offshore accounts, and then simply disappear with Anna, his new and improved Elena. He would leave me and the children with a mountain of debt and a foreclosed home. But the final discovery, the one that made Sarah Chen call the police, was the life insurance policy. Buried in a subfolder on his laptop, I found the documents. A year ago, he had taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on me. He was the sole beneficiary. I stared at the document on my screen, the black and white text blurring through my tears. This had escalated beyond financial fraud. This was something darker. Was he just going to leave me? Or was his smooth transition something more permanent? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the late hour. I was sleeping next to a man who saw me not as his wife, but as a liability with a $5 million price tag on her head. The game had changed. We weren't just fighting for my money anymore. We were fighting for my life. The day of the confrontation was meticulously planned. A direct attack at home was too risky, too unpredictable. Sarah Chen, ever the strategist, decided the setting had to be on our terms. Her conference room, a place of power and control. The bait was an urgent estate planning update. Mark, ever confident in his financial prowess and my ignorance, took it without a second thought. He even insisted his mother, Eleanor, join him, wanting her there to witness what he believed would be another step in his masterful plan. I remember every detail of that morning. I chose my outfit with care. A simple, elegant navy blue dress. It was the dress of a woman who was calm, composed, and in control. Even though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, I drove to Sarah's office alone. The detectives and my final, crucial witness were already waiting in an adjacent room. Mark and Eleanor arrived precisely at 10 a.m. He strode in, radiating arrogance, a confident smile plastered on his face. He kissed my cheek, a dry, papery gesture that made my skin crawl. "Elena, darling, glad you could make it." Eleanor gave me a tight, condescending smile, patting my arm. So good that Mark is taking care of all this complicated business for you, dear. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. We sat around the huge mahogany conference table. Sarah began the meeting with a dry recitation of our known assets: the house, the investment portfolios, the retirement accounts. Mark leaned back in his chair, looking bored, occasionally correcting Sarah on a minor detail to assert his dominance. He was completely at ease, a predator enjoying the final moments before the kill. After about 15 minutes, Sarah paused, folding her hands on the table. Mark, there are a few discrepancies in the accounts that we need to clear up. And before we go any further, there are a few other interested parties who wanted to join us for this discussion. Mark's confident smile faltered for the first time. What other parties? Our finances are our private business. On cue, Sarah pressed a button on the intercom on her desk. You can send them in now. The conference room door opened, and in walked Anna Keller. Her face was pale, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger and far more fragile than she had in her ID photo. She was wearing a simple blouse and jeans, a stark contrast to my power dress. She refused to look at Mark, her eyes fixed on the floor. Behind her, looking grim and official, were two police detectives, a man and a woman. The color drained from Mark's face. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. What is this? What is she doing here? Eleanor let out a small, strangled gasp, her perfectly manicured hand flying to her chest. The trap was sprung. Please, have a seat, Mark, Sarah said, her voice dripping with ice. The large screen at the end of the conference room, which had been displaying a generic law firm logo, flickered to life. The first image was a bank statement from a Cayman Islands account, showing a balance of over $2 million. Then came another and another. Slide after slide, Sarah presented the case. The illegal wire transfers. The emails between Mark and Eleanor, with phrases like the liability and smooth transition, highlighted in red. Photos of Mark and Anna together, taken by a private investigator Sarah had hired, showing them meeting in quiet cafes. Him coaching her, handing her documents. A close-up of the forged signature on the power of attorney document next to my real one. Mark was sputtering, a litany of denials and blustering threats. This is insane! This is fake! My wife is clearly having some kind of breakdown! Eleanor started to cry, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. My son! My poor son! She was always so unstable, so ungrateful for everything he gave her. Then Sarah displayed the final slide, the $5 million life insurance policy. The room fell silent. Even Mark was stunned into silence. $5 million, Mark, Sarah said quietly. Is that what Elena's smooth transition was worth to you? That's when he snapped. The charming, sophisticated mask shattered, revealing the monster beneath. His face contorted with pure, undiluted rage. You bitch! He screamed, his voice hoarse. He lunged across the table toward me. You were supposed to be the stupid little wife! You've ruined everything! The detectives were on him in an instant, pinning his arms behind his back, cuffing him before he could get within 5 feet of me. He was still screaming, a wild, cornered animal, his threats and curses echoing in the pristine conference room. It was then that Anna spoke for the first time. Her voice was trembling but clear, amplified by the stunned silence. She addressed the detectives directly. He told me he was a widower, she said, her eyes finally flicking toward Mark with a look of pure contempt. He said his wife died a year ago and he was trying to protect his assets for his children from her greedy family. He promised to help pay for my mother's cancer treatments. But when he asked me to forge that signature at the bank, I knew it was wrong. He threatened me. He said he would ruin my life if I didn't go through with it. Her testimony was the final, damning nail. It corroborated everything. He hadn't just deceived me. He had preyed on another woman's desperation, twisting her into a pawn in his sick, elaborate game. The detectives read him his rights, the familiar words a surreal mantra of justice in the soundproofed room. As they led him away, a sputtering, defeated shell of a man, his eyes met mine one last time. There was no remorse, only pure, venomous hatred for the woman who had dared to outsmart him. The aftermath was swift and brutal, a controlled demolition of the life Mark had built on lies. He was arrested on the spot, and the media, catching wind of a high-profile financial advisor accused of such a bizarre and sinister plot, had a field day. The story of the doppelganger deception was everywhere. The charming facade he had so carefully cultivated was publicly and irrevocably shattered. Mark faced a mountain of charges: multiple counts of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit grand larceny, aggravated identity theft, and, thanks to the life insurance policy and Anna's testimony about his threats, attempted insurance fraud and coercion. The district attorney, armed with the mountain of pristine evidence Sarah and her team had gathered, denied him bail. He was deemed a flight risk. He sat in a county jail cell while the legal machine churned forward. With Anna Keller's testimony as a cooperating witness and the digital paper trail that was impossible to refute, he didn't stand a chance. He took a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence, but it was still substantial. The judge sentenced him to 15 to 20 years in a federal prison. His mother, Eleanor, was not spared. Her emails proved her to be an active co-conspirator. She was charged, and though her lawyer argued for leniency due to her age, the judge was unmoved by her crocodile tears. She was sentenced to 5 years in a state prison. Her reputation in her rarefied social circles was obliterated overnight. The woman who prided herself on her family's good name had become a pariah, a whispered cautionary tale at the country club she could no longer enter. Financially, I was made whole. Sarah Chen and the forensic accountant, Mr. Davies, were relentless. They worked with federal authorities to freeze and repatriate every cent from the offshore accounts. In the end, the family court judge, having reviewed the criminal case, awarded me 100% of the marital assets. The house, the remaining investments, his entire retirement fund, it was all mine. I was granted sole legal and physical custody of Leo and Maya. Mark was left with nothing but a prison jumpsuit and the consequences of his own greed. Justice wasn't just a concept. It was a series of court orders and bank transfers that secured my children's future and gave me back my life. Fast forward 1 year. The woman who walked out of that law office is not the same woman who sits here today. The first thing I did was sell the house. The beautiful white colonial was a monument to a lie, and every room held a ghost. I needed a fresh start, a space that was entirely our own. Today, the kids and I live in a smaller, sun-drenched house in a different town. It's filled not with expensive, impersonal furniture, but with my own art, Maya's chaotic paintings, and Leo's collection of sci-fi novels. It's a home filled with laughter and peace, 2 things that were secretly absent from our old life. I took the biggest leap of faith and reignited my old passion. I started my own graphic design firm. I called it Phoenix Designs because that's what I had to do, rise from the ashes of my old life. I poured all my pain, my anger, and my newfound strength into my work, and it took off. I now have a roster of clients, a small but growing team, and for the first time since I was 25 years old, I am completely, gloriously financially independent. I sign my own paychecks. Leo and Maya are thriving. They're in therapy, processing the trauma of their father's betrayal in their own ways. But without the oppressive weight of his secrets and the constant tension that I hadn't even realized was there, they have blossomed. Leo, once so quiet and withdrawn, has found his tribe in a coding club. Maya covers her bedroom walls with vibrant murals. They are happy. They are safe. And that is my greatest victory. I'm no longer the naive, trusting woman who believed in fairy tales. I am stronger, wiser, and more discerning. I've reconnected with old friends, like Clara, who I had pushed away. I apologized for not listening, and she just hugged me and said, "Welcome back." I even had coffee with Anna Keller a few months ago. It was strange and a little awkward, but necessary. We were two women from different worlds, bonded by the shared trauma of being manipulated by the same monster. She testified against him, got a lenient deal, and was trying to rebuild her life, taking care of her mother, who was now in remission. We didn't become friends, but we found a quiet sort of peace. We wished each other healing and went our separate ways. I am not just a survivor. I am a thriver. I took the rubble of the life he tried to destroy, and I built an empire of my own design. So here is what I want to leave you with. If you are in a situation where something feels wrong, I need you to listen to that feeling, that little voice in the back of your head, that knot in your stomach. That is your intuition. It is your soul's alarm system, and it is the most powerful tool you have. Do not let anyone, not your spouse, not your friends, not your family, gaslight you into believing that you are crazy or paranoid or insecure. Your feelings are valid. You are not an object to be managed or a liability to be phased out. You are not replaceable. Your worth is not and never will be determined by someone else's inability to see it. Betrayal feels like an ending. It feels like death. But I am living proof that it can also be a beginning. You can survive this. You can rebuild, and you can build a life that is so much more beautiful and authentic than the one that was taken from you, because this time you will be the sole architect. Thank you so much for watching and for listening to my story. It's not easy to share these things, but I know how important it is for us to know we're not alone. If this resonated with you, if you found any piece of your own story in mine, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and strength. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think, or share a piece of your own journey if you feel comfortable. This is a community, and your voice matters here. And if you're able, consider hitting that super thanks button to help support the channel. Stay blessed, stay strong, and remember, the truth always, always comes out. I'll see you in the next video.